My name is Tim, and I'm a 25-year-old college student working at a local bar to make ends meet. I wanted to attend the big game this year, but I didn't have the cash, so I snuck in through a secret tunnel. But before I dive into that, let me tell you a bit about myself. I'm not usually one for superstitions or believing in the supernatural. I'm your regular guy working a crappy job at the bar, like I said, trying to make ends meet. My life revolves around trying to make enough tips to pay the rent, grocery shopping, and Netflix weekend binges. Sports were my escape, especially football. I lived for those Sundays when I could just absolutely lose myself in the game, cheering for my team. I'm talking full-blown losing my mind. It's a spiritual experience, collectively losing yourself with a crowd of people all living their lives through the team that they are cheering for that one day we live. Then we go back to our 9 to 5 jobs. Back to the story. I had always been a huge fan of football, and the big game was coming up, and that was the ultimate event. I had never been able to afford tickets, but that wasn't going to stop me from seeing the game. I had heard rumors of an underground tunnel that led directly to the stadium, and I was determined to find it. After hours of searching, I finally found what I was looking for. A small, unmarked door in the back of a Chinese restaurant. I knew this was it. I took a deep breath and opened the door. The tunnel was dark and damp. The air was thick with the smell of mold. I could barely see in front of me, but I pressed on, driven by my desire to see the game. After what felt like hours, I finally saw a light at the end of the tunnel, and my heart rate quickened with excitement. This was it. I was now entering the big game. I quickened my pace, eager to see what lay ahead. As I emerged from the tunnel, I found myself in a large, dimly lit room. The walls were lined with strange symbols. The air was thick, the smell of incense. In the center of the room was a large stone altar, and on the altar was a strange, glowing object. I thought, was this the ring? The trophy? Suddenly, I heard a noise behind me. I turned around to see a group of robed figures emerging from the shadows. The figures began chanting in a language I didn't understand, and they were holding knives while chanting a hypnotizing spell and pointing down at me, winking at me, then forming the Illuminati symbol with their hands and winking again. I tried to run, but I was paralyzed under some type of spell by the melody. I began to move to the rhythm of the spell. The robed figures also began stepping in unison to the beat, stepping closer to me, sweeping left, sweeping right, sweeping to the beat, performing dance moves, raising their knives to the air, then slashing their knives downward, each step in a terrifyingly hypnotizing dance sequence, all while pointing at me, winking at me. They were getting closer. I screamed at the top of my lungs inside of my own head. Wake up, move, run. And like breaking out of duct tape hands, I broke out of the spell in my own mind and ran from the robed figures in a terrifying, horrifying sprint for my own life. I ran and ran until the sound of their chanting finally drew silent. I then proceeded to walk forward down the dark, damp tunnel, my flashlight casting eerie shadows on the wall. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and decay, and I could hear the sound of dripping water through the tunnel. As I walked, I couldn't help but feel like I was being watched all over again. The walls seemed to be closing in on me, and I could feel my heart racing. Suddenly, I noticed something strange about the walls. They were covered in a thick layer of slime, and as I shone my flashlight on them, I could see that they were pulsating. It was as if the walls were alive, breathing in and out, waiting for me to get closer. I tried to turn back, but it was too late. The walls had already started to move, closing in on me from all sides. I could feel the slime oozing onto my skin, and I knew that I was trapped. I screamed for help, but my voice was swallowed up by the darkness. As I lay there, trapped in the tunnel, I now realized I was not alone. There was something else in the tunnel with me, something that was watching me, waiting for me to make a move. I could feel its presence all around, and I knew that I was in grave danger. I don't know how long I lay there, trapped in the tunnel, but eventually I heard a sound. It was the sound of footsteps coming closer and closer. I tried to call out, but my voice was weak. And then, suddenly, the footsteps stopped. I could feel the presence of the thing in the tunnel with me growing stronger. You know that feeling when you wake up and you think, no, you know something is there with you and you just don't want to move. That was me for hours. But then, just as suddenly as it had happened, the presence was gone. The walls stopped moving, and the slime disappeared. I was alone in the tunnel once again. At this point, I was convinced someone must have spiked my drink or slipped me something. This couldn't all be real. What the heck was going on? I'm not sure what was going on, but at this point, I thought, man, just screw the game. It's not worth dying for, and I decided to get the heck out of there. But that's when I saw it. A high-quality H2O golf cart for the football players. Yep, running, keys inside, the headlights illuminating some type of ramp leading upwards towards the stadium. Well, I'm not very smart, clearly, because I hopped right in and pressed the gas, and then, with a whir of the electronic engine, I was headed up into the roar of the stadium, and before I knew it, I was there. But the problem was, the ramp immediately spilled out onto the field, like as if it was right on the edge of the sideline. So before I had even realized I was on the official field, I panicked and attempted to slam on the brakes, but I literally slammed on the gas pedal by accident. The players were lined up on the line of scrimmage. Keyword were lined up, because so was the direction of my out of control golf cart. 90% of both teams were now being plowed over by the front end of my golf cart. Players stuck underneath and hanging from the side and roof. A massive pile of carnage. It was a spectacle. I finally found the brakes, but it was too late. It was over, and so was the game because of me. I ruined it. I ruined the careers of 90% of both all-star teams. As I slammed on the brakes, the players on the roof and front end of the golf cart slid off and spilled onto the field, revealing a horrific scene around me. Blood streaks behind me. Penalty on the field. The most horrific thing wasn't the injured or even possibly dead players, but the sight of the fans in the stands in front of me. Some had a look of shock and horror in their face, shielding their eyes with their hands. Others were filled with rage. Many crushed their beer cans in their hands with rage, spewing foam out of the cans and spewing rage out of their eyes. Others slammed their beer cans against their heads and screamed some guttural, primal, primitive, wild sound of madness. They began ripping the seats out of the concrete with the kind of energy you see only in moments of lifting a car off of a child to save their life. But this was different. They were coming to take my life, and there were thousands of them spilling around me onto the field from every direction around me. That's when the shots rang out. The military fired several high-caliber warning shots into the air, and let's just say that only made things worse. There were now shots coming from every direction. After all, this was Las Vegas, and it seemed that there was now a civil war taking place simultaneously with the riot that I had accidentally started. The sea of fans that had once cheered passionately for their teams now stormed like the ocean. The stadium lights began to flicker, and the strobing light illuminated brief moments of horror and rage. Toxic smoke began filling the air from the fires, and the military firing crowd deterrent weapons like smoke grenades, tear gas, and who knows what else. Now the lights completely went out, and the only light remaining was the light from the fires blazing and the flashes from the weapons going off. I could feel the vibrations of the crowd erupting into a full-scale earthquake. I heard a section of the stadium collapse, and thousands of screams rang out into the air at once. This was total chaos. As I glanced around, desperately searching for any sign of safety, but the chaos seemed to have consumed every inch of the stadium. The noise was deafening, a cacophony of angry shouts, breaking glass, thundering footsteps, bullets blazing. Panic clawed at my chest as I realized I was trapped in the midst of perhaps the worst riot in Earth's history. A surge of fear coursed through me as I tried to make sense of the madness. The rioters, once passionate football enthusiasts, had transformed into a raging, murderous mob, faces contorted with rage. Flares of red and orange illuminated the madness, casting eerie shadows on the twisted expressions of those around me. I stumbled upon a small group of people huddled together, their eyes wide with terror. We exchanged nervous glances, silently acknowledging the danger that lurked in every direction. The air was thick with tear gas and toxic smoke from stadium seats burning, and I'm pretty sure I saw a pile of all the turf ripped out of the field, burning in the center of the stadium. The crowd was carrying one of those giant field goals hoisted on their backs towards the fire in the center. They were burning everything. I think people had just had enough. This was the one night a year they get to escape their increasingly stressful lives. I think our entire nation was just at a tipping point, and that this was the straw that broke the camel's back. And that's when I blacked out. The next thing I knew, I was waking up in a hospital bed. The doctors told me that I had suffered a heart attack during the blackout. My blurry vision began to clear, and I could see and hear the TV hanging from the wall above my hospital bed. It was playing the local news. The horror I had escaped from was now returning 10 times worse than before. The news report says the golf cart crash occurred on the final play of the game in overtime, and not only did it kill 27 players, but it disrupted the outcome of the game at the peak moment of emotion, and apparently the fans lost their mind and burnt the entire stadium down. And now it's spreading across the city and across the nation. Even reports are coming in from Paris of full-scale riots and civil war spreading across many nations. But that's the least of the problems. There are reports of nukes going off in multiple nations as tensions have spilled over during the night, as multiple regions have lost control due to civil unrest spreading across the globe. They say they are moving me to another hospital because the hospital has to be evacuated because it has been set on fire. Some are saying the city is a total loss. I would say that is a major understatement, and that with nukes currently in the air, literally headed in every single direction you can think of, that this is the end, and I caused it by pressing the wrong pedal on a stupid golf cart during the football game. Well, I'm submitting this with the hospital's Wi-Fi, which is spotty at best since everyone is using it to place video calls to their beloved family members. I doubt this even gets successfully uploaded to Reddit with the spotty internet, and I doubt there will be anyone left to read it. As I type this, the nuclear missile warning siren just went off across the city, and everyone is climbing under the tables here with their hands over their heads. Dear Lord, I glanced over to my left. The hospital's room window offered a narrow view of the outside world, and as I strained to pull back the sterile curtain, my eyes widened in disbelief. The once serene night sky had transformed into a canvas of surreal horror. In the distance, streaks of incandescent light cut through the darkness, painting eerie trails across the celestial expanse. The sight was both captivating and paralyzing. The night had been swallowed by an unnatural brilliance, as if the fabric of reality had been torn open to reveal the impending chaos beyond. The nuclear missiles, their fiery trails stretching across the heavens, moved with a terrifying grace that defied the calamity they created. Each streak marked a path of destruction, a trajectory that seemed to defy the laws of nature. The colors were hauntingly beautiful, a sickening palette of oranges, reds, and purples that clashed with the serene backdrop of the starlit sky. The missiles left behind a shimmering glow, a display that etched itself into the retinas, branding the observer with the harsh reality of impending doom. The night, once a cloak of comfort, now wore the garb of Armageddon. As I stood there, transfixed by the celestial dance of destruction, a wave of helplessness washed over me. The streaks across the sky were a sinister omen. a visual manifestation of the human capacity for self-destruction. It was as if the universe itself recoiled at the audacity of such an act, yet remained powerless to intervene. The air outside felt charged, pregnant with the weight of a world unraveling. The distant explosions, too distant to shake the hospital windows, but close enough to send shivers down my spine, punctuated the apocalyptic display. The once distant threat now felt tangible, an inescapable fate hurtling towards us at unimaginable speeds. In that moment, the world outside the hospital room ceased to be a mere backdrop to my existence. It became a theater of tragedy, a canvas on which the final act of humanity played out in fiery strokes. The streaks across the sky were not just physical entities, but metaphors for the irrevocable changes set in motion by me, irreversible and relentless. As I stood there, my breath caught in my throat, the world outside seemed to warp and twist in a grotesque ballet of destruction. And in that dreadful silence, with the ominous streaks across the sky as witness, I grappled with the surreal realization that the world as we knew it was succumbing to the merciless embrace of nuclear destruction. If we survive this, I promise to just watch the big game on TV next year. I'm so sorry. Sincerely, Tim.